The Galactic Arena roared with excitement. 1,000 different alien species filled the seats, each one eager to witness the spectacle about to unfold. This wasn't just any event, it was a battle for honor, respect, and supremacy. Every warrior from across the galaxy came here to prove their might. And yet, for the past several cycles, there had been one species consistently ridiculed: the humans. Smaller, physically weaker, and lacking the high-tech weaponry of the others, humans had failed time and time again. Every time they entered the ring, the outcome seemed inevitable. Laughter filled the arena as the announcement came over the loudspeakers. Once again, Earth was sending a warrior. The alien crowd was already anticipating the humiliation. They'd seen it before, and they were eager to witness it again. Murmurs of disbelief passed through the crowd. What could these humans possibly do? Surely, they would fail like before. The Zarnath warriors, a hulking race of combat veterans, prepared themselves in their corner of the ring. Their champion, over 8 feet tall and covered in thick, plated armor, laughed heartily at the thought of facing another human. "This will be easy," he growled to his comrades. One more weakling for the crowd's amusement. The gates on the opposite side of the arena began to open, revealing the human warrior. But this time, something was different. The crowd, ready to jeer, paused. Instead of the usual, visibly nervous human stepping out, a lone figure emerged. Clad in dark, efficient armor, the warrior moved with calm, deliberate steps. This was no ordinary soldier. This was a Spartan. The mocking laughter from the stands faltered. There was something about the way this Spartan moved, slow, steady, completely unfazed by the spectacle around him. His helmet reflected the artificial light of the arena, giving him an almost otherworldly appearance. The aliens couldn't see his face, but they could sense something different. The Zarnath champion grinned. "So, this is what humanity sends to die? You should have stayed on your weak little planet." The Spartan didn't respond. Instead, he adjusted the grip on his shield and spear, tools of ancient human warfare. While other species used plasma weapons and energy-based armor, the Spartan wielded simplicity. The Zarnath champion sneered, unable to fathom that such rudimentary tools could be effective in the modern combat ring. Without warning, the Zarnath lunged forward. His massive fists, enhanced with energy gauntlets, swung down with crushing force. The crowd gasped. But before the blow could land, the Spartan sidestepped, avoiding the attack with a grace unexpected from a human. The Zarnath's fist smashed into the ground, sending dust and debris into the air. In one fluid motion, the Spartan retaliated, driving his spear into the side of the Zarnath's exposed armor. It wasn't enough to cause significant damage, but it was a statement. The crowd went silent, their mocking replaced by a collective realization: this human wasn't like the others. The Zarnath warrior growled in frustration, swinging wildly again. But each time, the Spartan was just a step ahead, his movements precise, calculated. There was no wasted effort. Where the Zarnath relied on brute strength, the Spartan employed technique, honed over centuries of human conflict. Every swing the alien made, the Spartan countered with a perfectly timed strike or dodge. The alien crowd, once filled with laughter, now watched in stunned silence. The fight was no longer a joke. The battle raged on, and it became clear that the Zarnath was tiring. His massive size, once his advantage, now worked against him as the Spartan continued to chip away at his defenses. The Spartan remained calm, his breathing steady, his movements as sharp as when the fight began. He was a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Finally, the opening came. The Zarnath, frustrated and exhausted, left a gap in his defense. The Spartan seized the opportunity. In a blur of motion, he closed the distance and delivered a devastating blow to the alien's knee, forcing him to collapse. The once mighty champion was now on the ground, struggling to rise. The crowd erupted in disbelief. The mighty Zarnath warrior, a beast of strength and power, was brought to his knees by a human. The Spartan stood tall, his spear pointed at the fallen giant, but he did not deliver the final blow. Instead, he stepped back, allowing the arena's overseers to call the fight. As the Zarnath was carried away, The crowd buzzed with confusion. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Humanity was supposed to lose, to be humiliated. Yet here stood a lone Spartan, victorious. Whispers filled the air, and for the first time, the Galactic Arena didn't feel like an arena of mockery for the humans. It felt like the stage for something more. The Spartan didn't bask in the glory. He simply turned and walked back toward the gates from where he entered. No words, no gestures, just the quiet confidence of a warrior who had done his job. But as he left, the alien crowd, stunned into silence, began to murmur. Perhaps, for the first time, they had underestimated humanity. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't weak. They were not to be mocked. And as the gates closed behind the Spartan, the aliens watching knew one undeniable truth. Humans were warriors, and they were here to stay. The buzz of the crowd still lingered after the first match, but the atmosphere had shifted. Where there had once been certainty about human failure, now there was confusion. And in that confusion, something else was beginning to take root: respect. But it wasn't over. The Galactic Arena demanded more. One victory wouldn't be enough to overturn centuries of mockery. The Spartan knew this. The announcement for the next round boomed through the arena, and a new opponent stepped forward. This time, it wasn't just brute strength on display. The alien warrior, known as a Vexori, stood with an air of confidence that came not from size, but from intelligence. The Vexori were strategists, thinkers, and used technology in ways that often overwhelmed their opponents. The crowd cheered louder for this match, knowing this opponent would use both brains and brawn. The Spartans' earlier victory would mean nothing here. This battle required something more. The Vexori analyzed the Spartan immediately, its glowing eyes taking in every detail of his armor, stance, and weapons. It was clear that this alien was planning its moves well before the first blow was struck. The Vexori's armor shimmered with energy fields, protecting it from any physical attacks. Its weapon was a complex, multifunction staff that could shift into blades, energy projectiles, or defensive shields. The Spartan, in comparison, seemed ancient. A spear, a shield, and his quick reflexes were all he had. Without hesitation, the Vexori made the first move, firing a series of energy blasts from its staff. They moved fast, cutting through the air, aimed directly at the Spartan. The human warrior raised his shield, deflecting the blasts, but each hit vibrated through his body, testing his strength. He took a few steps back, reassessing the situation. The Vexori smirked, confident that its advanced technology would overpower any of the Spartan's simple tactics. The Spartan watched closely, studying the Vexori's movements. It was not reckless like the Zarnath. This one was careful, deliberate, and precise. But the Spartan was patient. He didn't rush forward. He didn't make wild attacks. He knew that to win against this enemy, he had to understand it first. The Vexori, however, interpreted his silence and stillness as hesitation, a mistake it was eager to exploit. Suddenly, the Vexori shifted tactics. With a wave of its staff, it sent out a pulse that disarmed the Spartan, pulling his spear from his hand with a magnetic field. The spear clattered to the ground several meters away, and the crowd erupted in cheers. The Vexori pressed its advantage, closing the distance between them. It switched the staff to blade mode and lunged at the Spartan with speed and precision. But the Spartan didn't panic. Instead, he parried the blade with his shield, the sound of metal against energy ringing through the arena. The Vexori's blade glanced off the Spartan's shield, but it continued its assault, slashing and thrusting with a series of fast, calculated strikes. The Spartan blocked each one, but the pressure was building. The alien was pushing him back, forcing him to retreat toward the edge of the arena. The crowd sensed that this would be the moment where the Spartan faltered. The alien warrior was too smart, too fast, and too well armed. Humanity's earlier victory was beginning to feel like a fluke. The Vexori sensed it too. It pushed harder, eager to corner its prey. But in its eagerness, it missed one crucial detail. The Spartan wasn't being pushed back. He was leading the Vexori into a trap. Just as the Vexori lunged again, the Spartan sidestepped and, with a swift motion, grabbed its staff. Using the alien's own momentum against it, he pulled the staff away and flung it across the arena. The Vexori stumbled, unarmed and off balance. The crowd gasped as the Spartan, now back in control, retrieved his spear. The tables had turned. But the Vexori wasn't finished. It activated a hidden device in its armor, surrounding itself in a shimmering energy field that deflected any incoming attack. The Spartan, undeterred, stepped forward, testing the barrier with his spear. The weapon bounced off harmlessly. The Vexori laughed, believing it had won. No physical weapon could penetrate its shield. It taunted the Spartan, mocking the human's primitive tools and methods. But the Spartan didn't react. He wasn't one to respond to insults or taunts. Instead, he watched, waited, and studied. As the Vexori advanced, confident in its impenetrable defenses, the Spartan noticed something, a flicker in the shield's energy field, a brief moment where it wavered. That was all he needed. Timing his next move perfectly, the Spartan thrust his spear with lightning speed, piercing the shield just as the flicker appeared. The spear struck true, hitting the Vexori's armor and sending it crashing to the ground. The crowd went silent. The Vexori, once so sure of its victory, lay defeated, its shield shattered and its body motionless. The Spartan, breathing heavily but still standing strong, lowered his spear. There was no need for a killing blow. The fight was over. For the second time that day, a human had bested a supposedly superior opponent. The crowd, stunned into silence, slowly began to realize what had happened. The Spartan had not just fought with strength, but with patience and intelligence, outsmarting an alien known for its tactical brilliance. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was a human victory, earned through skill and determination. As the arena announcer declared the Spartan the winner, the crowd erupted. But this time, the cheers weren't mixed with disbelief or mockery. They were genuine. The aliens watching had witnessed something they hadn't expected, a human outthinking one of the galaxy's smartest warriors. And in that moment, respect for humanity grew even stronger. The Spartan stood in the center of the arena, catching his breath after his second victory. The crowd's energy had shifted once again. No longer mocking, no longer merely curious, they were now eager, buzzing with anticipation. The tension in the air was palpable. It was clear to everyone that the Spartan wasn't just another human sent to fail. He was something different. But the real test was yet to come. The arena's overseers wasted no time. The next challenger was already prepared, and this one would be the most dangerous yet. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the arena as the next opponent emerged. This warrior was a Gorthian, a species known for its unmatched size and brutality. Towering above the Spartan, the Gorthian was a walking fortress of muscle and armor, its massive hands gripping a weapon that seemed more like a battering ram than a sword. The crowd roared in approval. The Gorthians had a reputation for crushing their enemies quickly and decisively. There was no finesse, no strategy, just raw power. And power, they believed, was the only thing that mattered in the end. The alien spectators knew this battle would be different. If the Spartan had bested his previous opponents with strategy and precision, it wouldn't matter here. The Gorthian wasn't interested in clever tactics. He was there to smash, to dominate, and to destroy. The Spartan, still calm, faced the towering figure. His armor, sleek and agile, looked almost fragile in comparison to the Gorthian's thick plating. The alien warrior snorted, unimpressed by the human standing before him. To the Gorthian, this fight was already over. All he had to do was land a single blow, and the match would be his. The Gorthian wasted no time and charged forward with a speed that belied his size. The ground trembled beneath him as he barreled toward the Spartan. The crowd watched with bated breath, waiting for the inevitable collision. But the Spartan, as always, was ready. Just as the Gorthian swung his massive weapon, the Spartan moved, quick and deliberate, avoiding the strike by mere inches. The alien's weapon crashed into the ground with enough force to leave a crater. The crowd gasped. The Spartan had dodged what should have been a crushing blow. But the Gorthian wasn't done. He swung again, this time faster, angrier. Each attack came with a roar, the sheer force of it shaking the arena. The Spartan was forced to stay on the defensive, his movements a blur as he dodged and deflected. But with each missed swing, the Gorthian grew more frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder, less controlled. The Spartan knew he couldn't keep this up forever. The Gorthian was too strong, too relentless. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation, and it would all be over. He needed a plan, something that would turn the Gorthian's strength against him. As the Gorthian swung once more, the Spartan made his move. Instead of dodging, he rushed forward, getting inside the Gorthian's reach. The sudden shift caught the alien off guard, and for the first time, the Spartan struck. It wasn't a powerful blow. The Spartan's spear found a gap in the Gorthian's armor, a small, vulnerable spot just beneath the shoulder. The Gorthian grunted in pain but didn't falter. He swung again, this time with more fury, but the Spartan was already moving, slipping out of reach before the Gorthian could land a hit. The alien crowd watched in disbelief. How could a human, so small and fragile, stand against such overwhelming strength? It seemed impossible. But as the battle continued, they began to see the truth. The Spartan wasn't just dodging for survival, he was wearing the Gorthian down. Each failed attack, each missed blow, drained the alien of his energy. The Gorthian was strong, but his strength had a limit. The Spartan, on the other hand, was patient. He struck when necessary, quick and precise, each blow aimed at weakening his opponent little by little. The Gorthian's frustration grew, and with it, his mistakes. The alien's swings became slower, more labored, and his once impenetrable defense began to crumble. The Spartan never gave him a chance to recover, always staying just out of reach, always ready to strike when the moment was right. Finally, the Gorthian made his fatal error. In a desperate attempt to end the fight, he raised his massive weapon high, ready to bring it down with all the force he had left. But the Spartan had been waiting for this. With a burst of speed, he moved forward, ducking under the Gorthian's raised arms, and drove his spear deep into the alien's exposed side. The Gorthian's roar of pain echoed through the arena as he staggered back, clutching his wound. The Spartan didn't hesitate. He pressed his advantage, delivering a series of quick, devastating strikes to the Gorthian's weakened form. The alien warrior, once so sure of his victory, now struggled to stay on his feet. The crowd, who had been so confident in the Gorthian's power, watched in stunned silence as the giant fell to one knee. But the Spartan didn't deliver the final blow. He stepped back, his spear lowered, and waited. The Gorthian, panting and bloodied, looked up at his opponent. For a moment, it seemed as though the fight might continue. But then, with a heavy sigh, the Gorthian dropped his weapon. The battle was over. The arena erupted in a mix of cheers and disbelief. The Spartan, once again, had defied the odds. He had faced an enemy far larger and stronger than himself, and had emerged victorious. But more than that, he had done it with honor, with skill, and with the kind of patience and determination that no one had expected from a human. As the Gorthian was carried away, the Spartan stood alone in the center of the arena, victorious yet again. The crowd, now fully aware of what they were witnessing, cheered not just for the battle, but for the warrior himself. The Spartan had proven, beyond any doubt, that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The aliens who had once mocked and laughed at humans now watched in awe, knowing they had underestimated this species for far too long. The Spartan turned and began to walk toward the gates, his movements as calm and deliberate as they had been at the start. He had faced 3 opponents, each more dangerous than the last, and had emerged victorious. But this wasn't just about winning a series of battles. This was about showing the galaxy what humans were capable of, and in that moment, the Spartan had done just that. The arena had fallen into a hush, the kind of silence that only came before the most important of moments. The Spartan had won 3 times, each victory more impossible than the last. What had started as a joke to the galactic crowd had become a legend unfolding before their eyes. And yet, everyone knew this wasn't over. The Spartan hadn't just proven himself. He had shaken the very foundation of what they believed about humanity. But now, the final challenge approached. The crowd knew what was coming. The Spartan must have known, too. Every species in the galaxy had one champion that stood above the rest, a warrior who was feared even by their own kind. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the final showdown that would cement either the Spartan's rise or his fall. From the shadows, the final opponent emerged. Taller, more menacing, and with an air of lethal precision, the champion of champions stepped into the arena. The Spartan's armor, already battle-worn, seemed to pale in comparison to the sleek, advanced gear of this opponent. This was no ordinary warrior. The alien crowd recognized him immediately, the Urkin warlord, undefeated in hundreds of battles, a master of every combat technique across the known galaxy. The Urkin didn't rush forward. He didn't need to. There was no doubt in his mind, or in the mind of the spectators, that this would be the defining battle. Where others had underestimated the Spartan, this warlord would not make the same mistake. His cold, calculating eyes took in every detail of the human before him. He knew that brute strength wouldn't be enough. Speed wouldn't be enough. He would have to dismantle the Spartan, layer by layer, wearing him down until there was nothing left. The Spartan, as always, stood silent, his stance firm, his eyes hidden behind his visor. If he felt fear, there was no sign of it. If he felt the weight of the crowd's expectations, he didn't show it. His grip tightened slightly on his spear and shield, the only tools that had served him in every fight so far. The Urkin's weapons were of a different kind, more advanced, more deadly. His twin blades gleamed with energy, their edges capable of cutting through the strongest of metals. Without a word, the warlord began the fight. His movements were fast, faster than any opponent the Spartan had faced. He closed the distance in an instant, his blades a blur of deadly precision. But the Spartan's shield was there, absorbing the initial strikes, deflecting each blow with practiced skill. It was a dance, a battle of timing and control. The warlord moved like a storm, relentless and unpredictable, but the Spartan was unyielding, always just a step ahead. The crowd watched, holding their breath, as the two warriors clashed. There was no room for error. One misstep, one wrong move, and it would all be over. But the Spartan wasn't looking for mistakes. He was watching, learning, calculating. The Urkin might have been faster, might have had more advanced weaponry, but the Spartan had something different. He had the experience of fighting against impossible odds. He had the resolve of someone who refused to be broken, no matter the opponent. The Urkin warlord began to press harder, his attacks growing in intensity. Sparks flew as his blades met the Spartan's shield again and again. But this wasn't just a fight of strength or speed. It was a battle of minds. The warlord was testing the Spartan, looking for any weakness, any opening that he could exploit. He was patient, methodical, waiting for the right moment to deliver the final blow. The Spartan knew this. He had been in battles like this before, where every second felt like a lifetime, where victory could be won or lost in an instant. And so he waited. His body was tired, his armor battered, but his mind was sharp. He could see the warlord's tactics, could feel the rhythm of the fight. And when the moment came, he would strike. As the battle raged on, the crowd could sense that something was shifting. The Urkin's attacks, though still ferocious, were starting to lose their precision. The warlord had expected the fight to be over by now. He had expected the human to crumble under the sheer weight of his assault. But the Spartan hadn't crumbled. He was still there, still standing, still fighting. And then it happened. In the middle of the warlord's onslaught, there was the briefest hesitation, a fraction of a second where his guard dropped ever so slightly. The Spartan didn't hesitate. With a swift, calculated movement, he stepped forward, driving his spear toward the warlord's exposed side. The Urkin barely had time to react, his blade coming up to deflect the blow, but it was too late. The Spartan's spear pierced through his armor, finding its mark. The crowd erupted in shock. The Urkin stumbled back, his hand going to the wound in his side. Blood, alien, dark, and thick, began to flow, staining the ground. The Spartan didn't move to finish him. He stood still, spear in hand, watching as the warlord struggled to remain on his feet. The Urkin wasn't finished. He roared in fury, launching one final, desperate attack. But the Spartan was ready. In a fluid motion, he sidestepped the strike, bringing his shield up to knock the warlord off balance. The Urkin fell to one knee, his strength finally giving out. The crowd, stunned into silence, watched as the Spartan stood over the defeated champion. There was no need for a killing blow. The battle was over. The Spartan had won. The arena, which had once echoed with laughter and jeers at the mere mention of a human warrior, was now filled with an awe-stricken silence. No one could deny what had just happened. The human, the underdog, the species they had all mocked, had done the impossible. He had defeated the greatest warriors the galaxy had to offer, and he had done it with honor, with skill, and with a determination that could not be broken. The Spartan turned, his back to the warlord, and began to walk away. He had nothing left to prove. His victories had spoken louder than any words ever could. And as he made his way toward the exit, the silence of the crowd turned to cheers, loud, thunderous cheers that shook the very foundations of the arena. Humanity, once considered weak and insignificant, had proven itself that day. Not through technology or brute strength, but through the sheer willpower of a single warrior who refused to be defeated. And in that moment, the galaxy finally understood what it had overlooked for so long. The Spartan stood at the exit of the arena, the echoes of the roaring crowd still reverberating through the vast space. He had won. Not just the battles, but the respect of the entire galaxy. What had started as mockery and disbelief had turned into awe and admiration. The same voices that had jeered him upon his entrance were now cheering his name. But the Spartan didn't dwell on it. Victory wasn't his goal. Survival, honor, and the relentless human spirit were what he fought for. As the doors closed behind him, the reality of what had just transpired began to settle in across the galaxy. Word would spread quickly. Every corner of the universe would know that a human had faced the greatest champions and won. For the first time in a long while, humanity would be spoken of not as the weak and insignificant species, but as a force to be reckoned with. The Urkin warlord, now defeated and humbled, was escorted away by his own kind. Though beaten, the warlord had fought with everything he had. And in his defeat, there was a strange sense of respect for the human who had bested him. It was the kind of respect that only comes from battle, forged in the heat of combat, and earned through shared experience. The warlord, a veteran of countless battles, had met his match in a human, something he never thought possible. And yet, there was no anger in his defeat, only a grudging acknowledgement of the Spartan's strength. Back in the arena, the crowd slowly dispersed, the chatter filled with talk of the Spartan. No one had expected this outcome. The alien species, many of whom had looked down on humanity for generations, were forced to rethink everything they knew. They had witnessed a human not just survive but thrive in an arena designed to crush the weak. And the Spartan had done so with nothing more than ancient weapons, a calm demeanor, and a determination that could not be shaken. But beyond the arena, the repercussions of the Spartan's victory were already being felt. Across the galaxy, leaders, warlords, and diplomats alike began to take notice. The balance of power had shifted, even if only slightly. For the first time in centuries, humanity had made its mark on the galactic stage. The message was clear: humans were not to be underestimated. They had a willpower and resilience that even the most powerful species couldn't break. And that made them dangerous. In the corridors of power, discussions were beginning. Some saw the Spartans' victory as a threat, a sign that humans might rise to challenge the status quo. Others saw it as an opportunity, a chance to ally with a species that had shown such unexpected potential. Whatever the stance, one thing was certain: humanity was no longer invisible. For the human race itself, the impact was profound. They had been fighting for survival on their own planet, struggling to make a name for themselves among species that had long ago achieved interstellar dominance. The Galactic Arena had been their one chance to prove their worth, and they had done so in the most dramatic way possible. The Spartans' victory became a symbol of hope, a rallying cry for those who believed in humanity's potential to stand on equal footing with the galaxy's best. But for the Spartan, none of this mattered. He hadn't entered the arena to make a name for himself or to shift the galactic landscape. He had fought because it was necessary. It was what he had trained for, what he had been born to do. The battles, the victories, they were just part of the journey. His duty wasn't to bask in glory but to carry the weight of his people's expectations with him, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As he made his way back through the corridors, the Spartan's mind was already focused on what came next. The battles in the arena were over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more tests of strength, strategy, and endurance. And the Spartan, ever unflinching, knew that he would face them head-on, just as he had faced the gladiators in the arena. The arena staff, normally indifferent to the participants, gave the Spartan respectful nods as he passed. They knew what he had done, what it meant. But the Spartan didn't acknowledge the gestures. His focus remained on the path ahead, as always. The accolades, the cheers, the newfound respect, it was all background noise to him. What mattered was the mission. And the mission was never over. Outside the arena, the galaxy would continue to spin. Empires would rise and fall, wars would be fought, and alliances would be made. But in the midst of it all, the Spartan's story would be told. His victories would become legend, a tale passed down among humans and aliens alike. And with each telling, the message would grow stronger. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through technology or power, but through sheer will and determination. And so, the Spartan walked forward, his mind already preparing for the next battle, whatever form it might take. For while the arena had been a proving ground, the real challenge lay beyond its walls. Humanity's future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had a warrior who could lead them through whatever trials awaited. The Spartan, ever steadfast, would be ready. The galaxy, once dismissive of humanity, would never look at them the same way again. What had started as a fight for survival had become something much larger. The Spartan had shown the universe what humanity was capable of, and now the galaxy would have to reckon with that truth. The era of underestimating humans was over. And as the Spartan disappeared into the shadows, the galaxy watched, waiting to see what humanity would do next.